Imagine waking up in a hospital bed, confused and disoriented, with no memory of how you got there. The last thing you remember is checking into a clinic for mild anxiety, but now your mind feels like a blank slate. You try to recall your name, your past, anything, but it's as if someone has erased parts of your memory. This isn't a science fiction story. It was the terrifying reality for many victims of Project MKUltra, one of the most sinister and secretive experiments in U.S. history. In the early days of the Cold War, paranoia ran high. The U.S. feared that Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean intelligence agencies were using mind control techniques to manipulate prisoners and soldiers. In response, the CIA launched MKUltra in 1953, a covert program designed to research mind control, brainwashing, and psychological manipulation. The goal? To create techniques that could control human behavior, break enemy agents, and possibly even manufacture real-life Manchurian candidates, assassins who could be programmed to kill without remembering their actions. The mastermind behind MKUltra was Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist and intelligence officer who became obsessed with the idea of controlling the human mind. Under his leadership, the CIA poured millions of dollars into secret laboratories, working with universities, hospitals, and even prisons. But Gottlieb's methods were far from ethical. Prisoners, psychiatric patients, and even ordinary citizens were subjected to horrifying experiments, often without their knowledge or consent. One of MKUltra's most infamous experiments involved massive doses of LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide. The CIA believed that LSD could be used to break a person's will, making them susceptible to hypnosis, reprogramming, and even forced confessions. Thousands of test subjects, including military personnel, psychiatric patients, and civilians, were unwittingly drugged with powerful hallucinogens. Many experienced paranoia, psychosis, and irreversible mental damage. One of the most shocking theories linked to MKUltra is its connection to Charles Manson, the infamous cult leader responsible for the Tate LaBianca murders. Evidence suggests that Manson was involved in LSD experiments at a California prison in the 1960s and may have learned how to manipulate minds through his exposure to MKUltra-related programs. Some researchers believe MKUltra played a direct role in shaping Manson's ability to brainwash his followers, a horrifying example of the unintended consequences of mind control experiments. In Canada, Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, a renowned psychiatrist at McGill University, became one of the key figures in MKUltra's experiments. Under the guise of treatment, Cameron subjected psychiatric patients to intense electroshock therapy, forced drugging, and prolonged sensory deprivation. Some victims forgot their families, their identities, and even how to perform basic functions like walking or speaking. Many never recovered. Cameron's infamous sleep rooms were designed to wipe a person's mind clean. Patients were put into a coma-like state using massive doses of drugs and subjected to looped recordings that repeated hypnotic suggestions for weeks. The idea was to erase existing memories and replace them with new ones. Instead, the victims suffered from permanent amnesia, mental breakdowns, and in some cases, death. Another eerie link to MKUltra lies in the case of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Before he became one of America's most infamous domestic terrorists, Kaczynski was a gifted mathematician at Harvard University. What many don't know is that, as a young student, Kaczynski was subjected to MKUltra experiments under the supervision of Dr. Henry Murray, a CIA-funded psychologist. For 3 years, Kaczynski endured brutal psychological tests meant to break his sense of self, something that may have contributed to his later radicalization. Beyond civilian experiments, MKUltra sought to create super soldiers who could withstand torture or act as programmed assassins. The CIA tested hypnosis, forced drugging, and even electroshock therapy on military personnel to see if they could implant false memories or control behavior remotely. Some of these soldiers later reported hallucinations, PTSD, and lost memories, classic signs of extreme psychological trauma. For decades, MKUltra operated in complete secrecy. But in the 1970s, after the Watergate scandal, investigative journalists and the U.S. Senate launched inquiries into CIA abuses. What they uncovered was shocking. Thousands of classified documents revealing the brutal extent of MKUltra's experiments. In a desperate attempt to cover up its crimes, the CIA destroyed most of its records. Only a handful of documents survived, giving the world a glimpse into what may be the most disturbing government program ever conducted on American soil. By the time the public started learning about MKUltra, the CIA was already erasing its tracks. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered that all documents related to MKUltra be destroyed, ensuring that the full scope of the program would never be known. Thousands of files, reports, and experiment records were shredded, leaving only a handful of surviving documents that had been misfiled. The CIA hoped that with the evidence gone, the world would never know the truth about what had been done in the name of national security. One of the most infamous deaths linked to MKUltra was that of Dr. Frank Olson, a government scientist who mysteriously fell from a 13th-story window in 1953. The official story? Suicide. But years later, his family discovered that Olson had been secretly drugged with LSD by the CIA, just days before his death. Further investigation revealed signs of foul play. His skull showed blunt force trauma, suggesting he had been knocked unconscious before he fell. Many now believe Olson was murdered to keep him from exposing MKUltra's darkest secrets. As time passed, survivors of MKUltra's experiments began coming forward, sharing chilling accounts of what had been done to them. One woman, known as Linda McDonald, was a patient at McGill University when she was subjected to months of electroshock therapy, drugging, and forced reprogramming. She lost all memories of her past, including her identity and her children. Others described being injected with unknown substances, kept in isolation, or subjected to extreme psychological abuse, all in the name of mind control research. In the 1980s and 1990s, survivors and their families filed lawsuits against the CIA for the trauma and damage they had suffered. One of the most famous cases was led by former patients of Dr. Ewan Cameron, who had destroyed their minds under MKUltra's Canadian experiments. The U.S. government never admitted full responsibility, but in 1992, Canada paid out $100,000 settlements to some victims, a small price for the lives that had been shattered. Even though MKUltra officially ended in 1973, its impact never disappeared. Many victims suffered from severe PTSD, paranoia, and memory loss for the rest of their lives. The program also influenced later government research into psychological warfare and interrogation tactics, techniques that resurfaced in the early 2000s with reports of U.S. torture practices at places like Guantanamo Bay and CIA black sites. The legacy of MKUltra continues to haunt intelligence agencies and conspiracy theorists alike. In 1977, during a U.S. Senate investigation into MKUltra, the CIA was forced to admit that it had conducted illegal experiments on American citizens. But the agency downplayed the extent of the program, claiming it had been a failure and that no real mind control techniques were developed. This contradicted the testimony of scientists and former agents who suggested that some experiments had been wildly successful, raising terrifying questions about what secrets were still being hidden. Some believe that MKUltra never truly ended, but instead evolved into more sophisticated psychological operations. Documents leaked over the years suggest that research into behavioral modification, mass manipulation, and subliminal messaging has continued in new forms. Whether through social media, mass surveillance, or advanced neuroscience, the government's ability to shape thoughts and influence behavior is stronger than ever, just without the crude methods of the past. MKUltra's shadow looms large in pop culture, inspiring films, books, and TV shows. From the brainwashing in The Manchurian Candidate to the MKUltra-like experiments in Stranger Things, The idea of government mind control has become a staple of modern conspiracy theories. The program even influenced real events. Many mass shooters and criminals have been linked to past psychological experiments, fueling speculation that covert mind control programs may still exist today. MKUltra is just one of many secret government projects that remained hidden for decades. If mind control, human experimentation, and psychological warfare could be carried out in secret for over 20 years, what else has been hidden from the public? The declassified MKUltra documents only reveal part of the story. Many researchers believe far worse experiments were carried out and buried so deep that we may never learn the truth. The story of MKUltra is a chilling reminder of what governments are capable of when given unchecked power. It raises a terrifying question. If they could do this in the past, what are they capable of now? We may never know the full truth, but the lesson of MKUltra is clear. We must always question, always investigate, and never accept official narratives at face value. If you want to uncover more hidden crimes and conspiracies, subscribe to Crime Chronicles and turn on notifications. There are many more dark truths waiting to be exposed.